Talk Radio.
She's the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York. Follow her voice, a straight dog is nice. She's a pushy broad from the Bronx, oh yeah. Don't be surprised if you wanna listen twice. Make decisions, find the right choice. Know yourself better, find your own voice. It's okay if you need help today, cause everybody needs a little push. From the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York.
Good morning and welcome, Transformation Talk Network listeners. My name is Ellen Stewart, and I am the pushy broad from the Bronx. Welcome to my show, Recovery Recharged, where we share advice and support from experts in addiction and recovery. I've got a really special show for you today because I want to be able to give you some valuable resources, especially around this time, the holiday season. We're going to talk about unveiling the power of sober companions. Many of you know what that is. I work with sober companions all the time as a recovery coach. Many of you don't know, but I brought in an expert to make it easy for us and to help navigate this. In this episode, we're going to delve into the role of a sober companion and why it's so important for people in early recovery. So let me introduce my expert. His name is Greg Berndt, and he's been in the mental health and addiction field for nearly a decade. He's previously worked at-risk youth and teen parents in his hometown of Philadelphia. He's been in personal recovery, which he shares openly for 12 years, like the pushy broad who's going on 40 years almost, one day at a time, and draws passion and inspiration from his own experience in order to help others along their journey to wellness. He's also here with us as a clinical master's in clinical social work from St. Leo University. He is currently working with sober companions, and I'm very, very pleased to have him here to tell us all about it. The Pushy Broad from the Bronx and Recovery Recharge welcomes my guest, Greg Berndt. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a great honor, and I just want to tell you I'm obsessed with your theme song.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I love the young man who wrote it for me, and I really do appreciate it a lot. So thank you so much. It stayed with me for a very long time. Okay, so I'm going to let you do this because you're the experts. Let's start by telling our listeners exactly what a sober companion does.
So I could give you an unsolicited TED Talk and 7 billion answers to that because it really is individualized to each unique person and their needs. But in a general sense, it's one-on-one companionship and 24/7 around-the-clock care. And I'd say a sober companion guides, empowers, and equips the client or the person of interest with the requisite toolkit they need to succeed in their wellness journey, whatever that might look like, whether it's addiction, mental health, trauma, complex medical issues. So it can look a number of ways.
So when you say sober companion, we actually mean when you say 24/7 attention, does that mean that someone actually knocks on your door, moves into your home or apartment, and stays with you 24/7?
Ideally and typically, yes. We're flexible in some cases. If you have children staying at home and you need the companion to stay in a nearby hotel and check out at 10 p.m., for example, and come back first thing in the morning, we're adaptable, but ideally it's a live-in situation. Might be in a shared Airbnb, it might be in a home. We get really flexible and creative with the solutions. But yes, ideally live-in.
Okay, so that means theoretically out there, listeners, you have a sober companion, you have a sober buddy that stays with you during your waking hours to ensure your sobriety or to ensure, for the most part, good mental health decisions. Is that accurate, Greg?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so just give us a little background. How did you get into this? Was this a personal journey for you?
It's a very personal journey for me. As you said in my intro, thank you. I've been in the helping profession since I was 14 years old. Eventually, my addiction spiraled out of control, and I was working with at-risk youth, advising them to not do what I was doing right after work in the throes of my own addiction. I moved down to Florida to get sober. Spent a few years in very humbling jobs, I'd say, and eventually found my way back to help others in a different capacity and be able to draw from my own experience in recovery. And I got into the field as a companion myself. So I've done about 8 years of companioning with a vast array of different kinds of clients.
That's marvelous. What was that experience like for you as a sober companion? How does that manifest itself? What did you learn?
I learned so much. I think why I was able to resonate with clients so much is because all of us get into what I call a stuck spot of sorts. I've termed it toxic familiarity, where we're so used to doing our maladaptive or we're stuck in our sickness, but it's so cozy and so much better than the daunting prospect of change and the courage that that takes. And having been in my own stuck spot for over a decade, helping people figure out what theirs looks like, and then helping give them a hand out of the quicksand, so to speak. And they got to pull my arm and bring themselves up. But it's really fun it's not fun, it's purposeful to help people figure out what exactly their stuck spot is, what's keeping them from growth and wellness and getting better. And I've learned a ton with all the different people that I've worked with. It's really been amazing experience, and it's strengthened my own recovery and growth process significantly.
I love that expression, toxic familiarity. That's fantastic. I always refer to it for my clients as being in the cycle of suck. Okay. Right? We just can't get out of it. We're that mouse on the wheel. And no matter what we're doing, whether it's a sobriety issue, whether it is a drug issue, or whether it's a mental health issue, right? I can't stop procrastinating. I can't stop making the same horrendous decisions in my life. Whatever it is, it's that situation where this is what I'm familiar with. This is what my ego is familiar with. So it's going to try to keep me safe, even in my misery. Don't you think?
Exactly. That's exactly similar terminology, different terminology for the same exact concept.
Okay. I'm going to borrow that toxic familiarity. Okay. So you can borrow cycle of suck.
Cycle of suck. Thank you.
Okay, right? Okay, so let's get back to sober companions, because that's a very unique thing. And everybody out there should realize that sober companions are different from recovery coaches. As a sober companion, like Greg said, you really almost attach yourself in a healthy way to the person that you are working with, which means you can move in theoretically and figuratively into someone's house and make sure that they're doing the right thing. So tell us a little bit more how sober companions differ from other forms of support, like group therapy or recovery coaching or AA meetings.
I've been accused of forcing flimsy analogies, but if you'll indulge me, what I say is, for example, if self-work is like a trade school and you're going to be an electrician, well, you can go to electrician school and learn everything that you need to know. They still don't just send you out to a big commercial property and say, hey, fix all these sockets. Essentially, a sober companion is almost like an apprenticeship in the integration and implementation of the skills that you've acquired in group therapy, residential treatment. And it can also be used before to help get you to that point. But that's what's really cool about it, is because it's so individualized and because it's 24/7. They might have the best therapist on planet Earth or the best psychiatrist, best recovery coach, but you see them 1 hour a day. What happens when something comes up that's big and earth shattering and you get emotionally dysregulated, or you need to process that with somebody, or you have a rough work day in conjunction with that, and now you're getting home and you're on your own, fresh out of treatment, trying to deal with life on life terms. I think it's incredibly beneficial to have somebody help you navigate that around the clock. And that doesn't mean be overbearing and police you or any of that, but it does mean be a resource for you to help navigate really difficult stuff in life, especially early in sobriety.
I think that's a wonderful thing. I think if everybody came out of treatment, or everybody that was looking to get clean and sober had a sober companion, they'd have a much better chance. So let's talk a little bit more about, kind of listing the kind of advantages that happen from engaging a sober companion. You mentioned a couple of them. What else stands out?
I think we collaborate really well with other professionals, and ultimately we're trying to have the person of interest co-pilot in their own journey and not be driving the bus, but with us in the driver's seat, given navigation. So that might mean figuring out what their goals look like. I want to go back to school. I'm going through a messy divorce and have to figure out the financials. I'm trying to work on my mental health. I got depression. So then we would get an ROI sign from a psychiatrist in that person's case and work with them and get on the same page with, oh, they need a therapist, they need this support group, they need to be doing yoga in the mornings. And we're really an interdisciplinary team with a really great roster. So a fit is really important, to have somebody work with the individual in a way that's going to click really well. But it can look such a different number of ways that really the sky's the limit.
Okay, so you actually work for a company called Sober Companions. So if people are interested, based on the conversation we're having, where can they find you?
You'll be posting the links, I think, at the end of this episode, but sobercompanions.com. They can reach out to me personally at gb@sobercompanions.com. And because of the privacy and discretion of our company, we don't do a ton of big marketing stuff, but reaching out directly is the best way to get in touch with us.
So what should be going on in someone's life to hire you?
Oh, and I mean, I think one of the really cool things is the untreatable people with suicidality, people with really complex medical issues that otherwise would just be in an institution indefinitely. It can go from all the way to that we will cater something specific to your exact needs. Sometimes that means multiple companions and rotations. Sometimes it means an entire case management team around you. But anything from a desire to get sober, but being in the stuck spot in the pre-contemplative phase, all the way to try to integrate stuff after treatment. Or sometimes you might be in treatment and have to go to your brother's wedding or go to a funeral or if we have clients that are in Hollywood that sometimes have to go to an award show. And in those events, we can make sure that you get through whatever it is safely on a leave of absence during treatment. So it can really be before, during, or after there's benefits.
It's like you're a shield, in a way, a protective device, so that somebody makes the right decisions and is able to have that guidance and support. So share a success story with us. Give us an idea of something wonderful that happened from being a sober companion and a client that you've dealt with.
So I'll just draw from one recently that we're working with collectively as a team. There's a girl out in the Southwest who had suffered multiple overdoses and was really scared, but did voice a desire for change and had willingness, but just didn't know how to get there. So in some cases that might require an intervention, and we weren't closed off to that. We're always workshopping the best approach. But in this case, she said, I'd be willing to have a sober companion come help me navigate all these steps. How do I get a approved leave from work to go to treatment? How do I get all these ducks in a row logistically with my apartment and finances and everything else? And we had her go out there, and then our whole team collectively worked with the family to, sometimes everybody's first impulse is to, how do we leverage this person? In this case, we really sensed that there was internal motivation. So how do we nourish that and fan that flame to get this person to go of their own volition? Because that has the best chances at long-term sustainable results. So this young lady just got out of treatment and asked for the same sober companion back, and was in touch 2-3 times a week throughout the course of treatment. And now they're in the implementation phase. She's going to start her job back up. She's getting into yoga classes, getting plugged into a recovery community in her hometown, getting a therapist involved. We're working with the family to make sure they're honoring boundaries and everything. But that's been a recent really cool one, to see a client that has willingness. They don't always, but even if there's a little bit there's a spark, we can fan the flame until it becomes a bonfire. And that's what we're seeing with that client right now. It's been really cool to watch. Still early, but we are safeguarding them and providing a constant in the equation. And when the sober companion steps away, we don't just say good luck. We scale it back and taper it, so they'll be doing remote meetings and make sure that she's well resourced locally to keep up the momentum with what they've built thus far.
That's fantastic. Can you tell me how young you would take them on? What's the age range?
We've worked with high teenagers. We wouldn't work with an 11 or 12-year-old, for example, but 16, 17, 18. So we can work with young adults, and we're really flexible. I think in some instances they've made exceptions and worked with teen programs and made it work, but typically in the high teens age. Correct.
And overall, approximately how long on average does a sober companion, in terms of weeks or months, spend with a person in need?
So that ranges vastly. Some people that are on fire and everything's clicking and they just need to get a healthy transition into the real world from treatment, could be 2 to 4 weeks. Some people that have been to treatment 10 times and they really want to make sure it sticks, could be 1 to 3 months. And then we have some clients that we've had for 5 years because the reality of their situation is they're constitutionally incapable or have so many presenting problems and complex medical issues and so much comorbidity, addiction, mental health, and medical, that they cannot live on their own. So we can trend them as close to independence and self-sufficiency as possible. But they'll always need some level of support. And a lot of times we're the last house on the block with that, because a lot of other places won't take them and their families don't want them in an uncomfortable living situation.
I see. So what you're actually saying to me is that sober companions really tailor their approach to the age group and to the unique needs of the individual in recovery. Yes. So how does that work? How do you assess?
So we typically take on a case. We staff everything every morning. So if we get a call from somebody that's listening to this or a referral source, first of all, we make sure we're an appropriate fit. We don't take on anything that we don't think we'd be the right fit for, but most of the time we are, because we have so much creative license in our approach. But we assess what's going on. We collaborate with other people that usually have more information than us. So we try to get treatment history, talk to their primary therapist when they were in residential, talk to their therapist from home, get a big scope of what's going on from their family's perspective, understanding to take it with a grain of salt, because we know families sometimes have their own biases with the identified patient, so to speak. So we comb through all of that and say, what would be the best approach? Does this person need A, B, or C? Do they need a companion for 3 months? Are they not ready for a companion? Do they need residential first? And sometimes we refer out and say, this would be a better course of action, and maybe down the road we can be helpful. But we do really intentional and thoughtful consideration in our approach to every client, and take our time assessing stuff, and don't just say, oh, take this person and throw them in, because that's reckless and dangerous in our world.
Okay, so there are so many of us in recovery. There are so many of us across the country and across the world in recovery, of which we are a very proud members. So if somebody wants to be a professional sober companion, what kind of qualifications or training do you think they should have or gear up for it? And in addition to that, tell us what's so rewarding about the job on top of that.
So to start off, I'd say that it depends on what the companion will be a fit for. So if we have somebody with complex medical issues, then ideally somebody who has a nursing background or has some medical experience to make sure that they can navigate what's going on with the client. If it's somebody in sobriety, not always, but oftentimes we get somebody in recovery themselves. They do go through, there's not a sober companion training, but we all go through a sober coaching training with CCAR to make sure that we understand the basics of sober coaching, with the understanding that it's 24 hours around the clock. A lot of people have degrees of different things that are, adjacent to the recovery industry or directly involved with mental health, social work. And then ultimately, that's the beauty of having such, I think the power of our team and having clinical oversight. We're not clinical, but I'm a clinician, and having our team behind each person gives them a lot of support so that they're not out on an island, unequipped getting out of their depth, if that makes sense.
Okay, so if somebody wants to be a sober companion, where do they look? Who do they talk to?
They can talk to me, or they can actually sign up right on our website, and we'll reach out to them. And we'd love to, if they're a good fit, we'd love to onboard them and put them to work.
Okay, so you're doing sober companionship across the United States. Are you going internationally as well?
Yes. Yep. We can go anywhere in the world. I have a client in Thailand right now. We work closely in the UK and Europe, but we have most of our team has passports and can be sent wherever the situation requires us.
That's fantastic. So I know everybody out there is wondering because certainly having a personal sober companion can help in so many different ways around the world. Without getting too specific, tell us a little bit about how the financial cost compares to other treatment options and whether or not this is covered by insurance.
That's one thing that really bums me out a bit, is that it's not covered by insurance. And I'd say that the cost is tantamount to what decent residential treatment would cost out of pocket. So depending on what the case is, because it varies depending on need and who we put on it, but in the same range as a $35,000 to $45,000 a month. And I hope someday that they take insurance, because quite frankly, a lot of days I feel like coming up on 12 years, I could use a sober companion myself still to navigate.
I completely understand, especially since they do a wide range of services.
Yeah.
So if someone is skeptical, if someone turns around and says, nah, I don't believe this is going to work, or is it, it's not going to be right. What do you say to those skeptics who say, you can't have somebody follow you around all day long? What do you say about the effectiveness of sober companions? Is there a way that you guys are measuring how successful it is?
No, I hope that we do. What I would say in that instance, I typically don't like to feel a need to qualify myself. And I actually have clients that would openly say, if you ever need us to, talk about our own journey, our experience with you, we'll shout it from the rooftops, because they have such conviction based on their own success and their personal journeys that, discretion and confidentiality aside, they're like, we would talk to any other parents who are thinking of sending a loved one, because they firmly believe in our work and what it does. So that's a better testament than I could ever give.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure that you have wonderful references and wonderful referrals. Okay, so now let's look at the family members. How can family members and loved ones support the relationship between the client and the sober companion?
So one of the things I look for when I'm going to treatment centers, is one of the things that's of paramount importance is, what's your family work? Do you involve the families? Do you work with them directly? Well, it's awesome when they have family week and they're doing that all in residential. Those problems don't go away when they get out and their loved one is working with a sober companion. So we typically do sober companionship with case management and family coaching, ideally in the background, to help them manage boundaries, where to step in, where to step back out, where to give space, where to be supportive, help them resource them for their own work. Because a lot of times the identified patient thing I talked about before is, oh, well, this, my kid's doing heroin, they're the sick one, they have the problems. Once that person starts getting healthy, it becomes glaringly evident how dysfunctional the family is as a whole, which most of them really are. And that's nothing wrong with them. It's just, it shines a spotlight on everybody else. And whether it's dysfunctional or just needs to do their own work and needs some support and deserves some support themselves, we're here, and depending on what the family is, to kind of help them navigate all that as well. We're not just working one-on-one with the companion. We're bringing everybody into the fold, because cohesion is the best results. It provides the best results.
Well, as a recovery coach, I have been privileged to work with sober companions, and Greg and I are collaborating on a few things as we speak. I highly recommend sobercompanions.com and also the whole idea of sober companions. So we have just about a minute left. I want you to share with us a little bit about the rewarding aspect of being a sober companion and the impact that it's made on the community, and then tell people where to find you.
So it's beyond rewarding. And some days any helping profession feels like raking leaves on a windy day. It can feel exhausting. And that's the fact, because it's a heavy job. But when you see the lights come on in somebody's eyes and them start to live their life to its fullest, there's really no feeling like that. And those success stories, and even just progress isn't linear, but even seeing somebody have a shift or a big change in one facet of their lives and watch the ripple effect of that is really astounding. And it keeps me inspired and in my purpose and drive to help in this profession.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm so glad you joined us today. Sobercompanions.com, especially this time of year. Go and listen and learn. This is Ellen Stewart, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx. If you need me, you know where to find me at pushybroadfromthebronx.com. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. This is Ellen Stewart, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, saying thanks for listening. And remember, everybody needs a little push.
From the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York.